Okay, let's go ahead and get a seat. I know we got folks online that's ready to speak to us. Would you right here? We're putting this microphone right between us two.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Where's the Diet Coke at?
Oh, I drank it on the way over.
You drank it on the way over here.
Can.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't last long, does it?
Don't like it.
Well, let's get started on our joint meeting. I'm glad to have my good friend, Senator Ginn, here with us. And he and I were on a Zoom call early this morning with the DOT board.
Glad to be with them. Glad to be with you.
Mr. Chairman, I heard we did a good job.
They must be confused.
I know, but we're just glad to be together. We've got a couple of things that we need to get started with. Is the 10-year plan. I know we've got Commissioner and Janine on, and if it's all right with you, Mr. Chairman, something you want to like to say?
I want to introduce some of our Senate Transportation Board members. Said since they're relatively new, this is Senator Clint Dixon. Said I don't think that Gwinnett County has any transportation issues that I know of, but he solved them all. He's taking care of that. Jason Anabarte said down in the kind of the Columbus area, said a little further north, said up that way, said they go to Columbus and come back. Said we got that covered. Said let's see who else we got here with the Senate. Said they had Leader Dugan here a minute ago, and I think maybe Senator Gooch will be here in, a little bit later. So. I'm sorry. I can't recognize the back of that head. That's David Lucas. By all means, who could miss David Lucas? You cover the middle part of the state. Said Senator Lucas said he covers it like they do. So I was down in his neck of the woods in Sparta earlier this weekend. It was a nice place down there.
You'll put the pressure on me to introduce all these fine House members that are here on a Thursday afternoon.
You don't have to.
I appreciate them for being here. Vice Chairman Casey Carpenter, where are you at? See right there. Great gentleman from Dalton, Representative Holly. Who else we got here? As I look across, Jenkins, Weedower, gosh, Philip Singleton,
Smith.
Vance Smith knows more about me, Betty, and certainly Mrs. Earhart. Thank you. As we get together, we're just glad to have you all here. Well, let's get going because I know some people have things to do. Oh, who we got online? Representative Jones.
Hey.
And hey there, and Representative Brad Thomas.
Hello.
We're on. Thank you. So right now, let's go ahead and get started with Russell McMurray. We'll turn it over to you, Russell, when you jump on. And if you'll present the 10-year plan to us, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Jaspers, Chairman Ginn, thank you. And to the members of both House and Senate Transportation Committees, it's a pleasure to be with you today. And I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you can see this okay from afar. Let me get it working and hopefully you'll see this. If somebody can give me a verbal affirmation that you can see it, I'd appreciate it.
We're good. Yes, sir.
All right, let me make sure now we can show it. How about that?
We're good. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Again, our intent today, Janine Miller is trying to log in now, having a little bit of technical difficulties. So I hope she was able to join us, but we'd like to talk to you about the 10-year plan and the look ahead, but start with a little bit of background. And as I've been to the different appropriations committees, we talk about traffic because I think this traffic volumes and what we see is a good indicator of Georgia's economy, recovery, and just a good indicator of the economy in general. So I pulled this, it's the latest and greatest national data relating to how many vehicle miles are traveled in a month. So this is national data comparing November of 2020 to November of 2019. And this again, vehicle miles traveled, think about it, if you were to draw a box around these group of states and counted up how many how far people drive, if you will. So I have to note that it's a little bit hard to get your mind around, but the numbers in black are billions, not millions, but billions of miles driven in a month. So it's interesting to note when you look at the South Atlantic, Florida, Georgia, all the way up through West Virginia there, or Virginia and Maryland, is off about 10.6%. Georgia actually was better than the average of those, that the vehicle miles traveled in November were down 8.3%. And I think it's interesting to note, if you look at those other regions around the state, you can see that Georgia is doing a little better than most, except maybe the South Gulf of Texas and that area. But again, November, we were seeing traffic beginning to trend back up, and we'll take a little deeper look at that on the next slide. And these will be very fast. I know it's probably hard to see, but it's the colors that sort of tell the story. These are our rural interstate volume trends. At appropriations committees, I showed you percentages. These are actually volumes. But the story here is when you see the blue line and the orange line, the blue line is this year, the orange line's a year ago. So if the blue is above the orange, that means traffic is higher than it was a year ago. If they're about the same, then traffic's about the same. And if the blue is lower than the orange, that means traffic volume's a little lower. So rural interstates have trended above what it was a year ago and currently trending slightly down. Now, if you look at tractor trailer volumes, they're still up. Here is rural state routes. So this is everything that are, 2-lane state routes or state routes, 4 lanes that are not interstates. And if you look at the right side of this, which is the first part of January, you can't really tell the difference, meaning that traffic volumes are pretty much the same as they were a year ago on rural state routes. Now, if we move into the urban area, and this is predominantly metro Atlanta traffic, you can see that the blue is still below the orange, but not significantly less. And in fact, since January, we've actually seen that trend of close the gap a little bit more, meaning that traffic is becoming more like it was a year ago than the past. And of course, if you're in metro Atlanta, you know that the morning rush hour is still not much of a rush hour, but you're beginning to see more and more of rush hours in the afternoon. Now, here's a look on the next slide is urban state routes. So everything that's not an interstate. And that traffic volume still is a little down as well. But again, seeing it trend back a little closer to normal. So the story between urban and rural is very much normal, if not above normal in some instances. And urban is slightly behind still, but gaining ground. So I just share that. Everybody's always interested in, it's like asking about the weather. When people see me, they ask about the traffic. So I always like to share this information. Now let's talk a little bit more about why we're here, and that is the proposed 10-year plan update, which covers fiscal year 2021, of which we're in, out to the year 2030. So as we work on the 10-year plan, we have to start with a lot of funding assumptions. And we break those down into basically federal and state. So the FAST Act, or the federal funding, if you will, here's the assumptions we made. We're using the current federal fiscal year numbers from the FAST Act, which I might add is a 1-year extension of the FAST Act, which is expired. We use those numbers for FY22 to get us to FY22. And then we applied a 1% growth factor going out to the year to 2030. Now, in Federal Appropriations Act, generally they will appropriate a little more money in each of the consecutive years over usually a 5-year bill. Now we're waiting to see what happens with Congress. The word on the street is infrastructure bill is important, and we actually would expect from what we're hearing that those numbers or revenue might be higher than what was in the FAST Act. we'll keep you posted, and we'll keep our ear on the ground to hear what we find out about that. Also on the federal ledger side, we use our current TIFIA loan or proposed TIFIA loans. Those are federal loans for the U.S. Department of Transportation's Build America Bureau that we may anticipate to use over the next 10 years. We also roll in our federal Garvey bond amounts into this table that we'll show you. We also include any infra or build grants. Those are federal grants that come our way. We currently have one that's $184 million for our State Route 400 project. And we have one on State Route 96 down in Twiggs County that's about $22 million for that project. So those are baked into the numbers as well. And we've also baked into the plan the coronavirus relief funds that became available by Congress in December of last year. So that's sort of the federal assumptions. Now, the one thing about the federal dollars, they come in at least 13 buckets. So we do have to align buckets with uses. The other assumptions we have is on our state budget. So we use our approved amended FY21 budget and the proposed FY22 as a start. And past 24, fiscal year 24, we used a 1% growth factor. So we held it steady basically for 23. We used our current bond proceeds that we have that have not been utilized yet. But we did also bake into what's proposed in the 22 budget as well. This also includes CERTAS, FSTR bond program of where they are using bond dollars or will use bond dollars to pay down some of their existing bond debt and also generate some revenue to help their operations to advance some of the major mobility improvement projects around Georgia. Now, one thing we do exclude out of the 10-year plan because it's not enumerated in the statute itself is the local maintenance improvement grant funds, which is hovering right around $192 million a year, or any intermodal funding at all. So intermodal sort of exempted out of this. Now, how do we get at the 10-year plan? We have to do a lot of strategic planning. And I'll hand it off to Janine Miller here to talk about the planning process and all these plans that go into the 10-year plan. Janine?
Good afternoon, committee. Thank you, Commissioner. I hope you all can hear me and see me okay. Yep. Is that a thumbs up, Commissioner?
Yes,
okay. Okay, great. Thank you. GDOT planning has been in existence as an office for decades, of course, but I've been able to recently come in here about 7 months ago, thanks to the confirmation from the Joint Committee, and I'm very grateful to you and Governor Kemp for bringing me into this role that is really so vital for our state and for the department as we think about what are the best ways to invest these taxpayer monies that support our economy in really important ways. The first way is through the statewide strategic transportation plan that was put into law back in 2009. It today dovetails and is the same as the federal long-range plan for the department. We also are charged with the statewide transportation improvement program. That is a project-specific short-range list differentiated from the long-range that is the strategic plan. We also work very closely with the 16 MPOs around the state to do their short-range transportation improvement programs 4 years, 5 years out. We also have over the past decade, and we'll be doing an update to our state freight and logistics action plan. We'll get started on that this year. We help out with the managed lane implementation plan, as well as county and multi-county transportation plans, asset management, pavement and bridges, and the strategic highway safety plan. All of these wrap together to make sure that our taxpayer funds go to the most impactful projects and programs over the short and long range. So we'll talk a little bit today about the SSTP, which was approved by Governor Kemp last week and was also approved, thankfully, by the State Transportation Board today. Here's paper copy, but you can find it there on the website. I do encourage you to take a look there. It's about 100 pages, but don't worry, it's not boring reading. There's plenty of graphics and really helpful, we hope, information in there. As I go through the presentation today, I'm going to point out a few things that are in this SSTP update this year that I think will be most interesting and helpful for you all. First of all, we take the governor's strategic goals for the state and delineate what are GDOT focus areas for the ones that are applicable to the transportation network that we are stewards of. These words on the slide here are pulled directly from Governor Kemp's strategic goals for the state, making Georgia #1 for small business, with expanding Georgia's role as a world-renowned hub for global commerce, developing, supporting the development of skilled workforce for current and future needs across the key industries in the state, ensuring that taxpayers can easily navigate and find necessary information. This SSTP into and of itself is the first way we're carrying that out, but there will be more ways we're going to be showing the great work that's done here at GDOT. In terms of reforming state government, which is also the governor's goals, we're maximizing taxpayer value with conservative budgeting. So everything that's in this strategic plan is based on the revenues we're currently projecting from current existing revenue sources at the federal and state level. And we're going to be working on and hopefully expanding our public-private partnerships and leveraging technology to best utilize our state resources. Strengthening rural Georgia is also important for the work of state government. Certainly here at GDOT, we're focusing on ways that we can improve rural safety, but and capacity for economic development. But there's also in the governor's goals rural broadband access, where there are roles we can play at GDOT to help the private industry and DCA with that work. As well as supporting the regional strike teams that Department of Economic Development is leading. And of course, putting Georgians first, safety is always #1 for us here at GDOT. So this strategic plan builds on that through two sorts of tracks of work: investing and advancing. Investing meaning when we have these $71 billion of projected revenues, what tangible projects, maintenance, operations do those dollars go to strategically focus on our statewide priorities? But then what's new in this plan is we're also talking about ways we're going to be advancing our planning work so we can continuously improve the decisions that we make for return on investment, certainly economically, but also to sustain and improve our quality of life statewide. This framework that is here is also found in the strategic plan. It shows how governor's goals, as well as those that are the priorities of the State Transportation Board, advise this strategic plan in investing and advancing. And how are we investing? How are we advancing? We're doing those on really three aspects of our responsibility set here: statewide freight and logistics. You look at the green bar in the middle. People mobility in Metro Atlanta, and people mobility in emerging metros in rural Georgia. And we're in each of those aspects, we are looking at investing in foundational infrastructure, keeping what we have in a state of good repair and safe, catalyzing the economy and bringing innovation to our infrastructure. That is the work that is encapsulated here is the work that GDOT's been doing for years, and we've packaged it and shown it in a way that we hope is informative and helpful. But we're also showing how we're advancing our planning here at the Office of Planning with new plans, new programs, types of projects, partnerships, and evaluating performance in ways we've not done before. So the big so what of this is really, it comes down to how we pick projects. That happens in the STIP, or the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, as well as what are our priorities for our freight and logistics action plan, the 10-year plan going forward, and other plans and programs. For those of you who are able to access the document online, the executive summary, page 5, or ES5, is essentially the plan on the page that shows how we're doing this invest work really in just one quick snapshot. So that's executive summary, page 5. Next slide would be great. I do want to focus for just a moment, because we know how important freight and logistics is for our state, but thank you to the General Assembly for the work that has been going on over the past 2 years for the Freight and Logistics Commission. Prioritizing our freight flows in a safe and efficient manner has been, I think, paramount for our economic success over the decades, and will continue to be vital. So this is a sort of a laundry list of work we're doing in the advancing planning. I wanted you to see that we're going to be updating our state freight plan. We have a state rail grade action plan that we have to create for the federal government, but we're going to take that on in earnest in ensuring that we're addressing grade crossing, rail crossing safety. Intermodal connectivity is obviously also critical. The Savannah River crossing is under assessment, as well as looking at ways we can apply for federal discretionary funding. The INFRA grant is an example, as Commissioner mentioned earlier. We're exploring ways we can partner with other entities, whether it's state government or private sector, on truck parking opportunities, supporting rural strike teams and planning out those grad site connections. For those of you who don't know, the grad site Georgia Ready for Accelerated Development, there are about 60 of those around the state. And we are looking to make sure that those rural strike teams have the transportation connectivity around those economic development sites to really promote what Georgia can do for business. In partnerships, we're going to be working closely with the Atlanta Regional Commission as well on their regional freight mobility plan. We're excited about that. That'll be the first time in history we're going to link up with our state's largest metro area on freight planning. We're going to take a look at the future with broadband connectivity that might be needed for future supply chains and trucking technologies. Always looking for supply chain resilience and redundancy, both different routing and different modes, and how we can manage all the freight that's flowing toward us through industry partnerships. And really, it's all about Georgia's competitiveness there. It's the second to last bullet for as a global, continuing to be a global hub. All in total, we know that the state is growing in population. We know that manufacturers are locating here. We know that agriculture production is going to grow tremendously over the coming decades. We also have learned, thanks to some analysis over at the Department of Economic Development and the governor's press release earlier this week, that Georgia, for the first time, has entered as one of the top 10 states for exports. All of the things that we know are happening and will be happening are going to go into this advancing freight planning work, taking into consideration certainly all the recommendations from the Freight and Logistics Commission around industry attractiveness, intermodal connectivity. We're pretty excited about this work. Because in a nutshell, and these will click they'll show up as you click there. More than half of truck trips in Georgia pass through a rural area at some point in their journey. That's nearly 600 million tons of goods a year at $875 billion into, out of, and within the state, supporting more than 180,000 jobs and 15,000 direct Georgia businesses in freight and logistics. On top of that, we have logistics-enabled facilities, distribution, manufacturing, food processing, that all account for 84% of last year's private investment. Those companies rely on our transportation network, roads, bridges, and rail intermodal connectivity and ports for their business to flourish. We're pretty excited about that. That is why we're focusing on freight and logistics. Thank you for your leadership on that. And people mobility in Metro Atlanta is our next track of work, and it's important. These are some graphics from the strategic plan. This is in 2019. We had logged about 82 hours per person sitting in traffic a year at a cost of $1,200 per driver. Our major mobility investment program, MMIP, but that includes new express toll lanes on Georgia 400, 285, the commercial vehicle lane south of Metro Atlanta. Overall, our assessment is it's going to relieve traffic and induce a travel time savings of 15%, or $3.28 billion a year. And we're pretty excited also about the other orange box there, that those express toll lanes are also express for transit. Reliable trips to work are vital and will be supported by improved travel times of 44% for buses and transit vehicles on our new express toll lanes for Metro Atlanta's 6 million residents and 3.8 million employees. Major employers, of course, in the Fortune 1000, generating $350 billion of aggregate revenues, and small businesses need to rely on our infrastructure and for their both their employees and for their cargo coming inbound and outbound to their customers. That's a key feature of the plan, as well as people mobility in emerging metros and rural Georgia. 20%, okay, so a fifth of Georgians live in rural areas, but more than half of our infrastructure, our road lane miles, are in rural areas. That is GDOT's main responsibility, is stewardship of those rural roadways. So we take our role in supporting rural Georgia very, very seriously, especially because of the fatality rate is 56% higher in rural areas than metro areas. So we are looking at the emerging metros. Options for residents and businesses has really been tremendous. There's recent reports out from the economic development community that that workers are looking for the improved quality of life and lower cost of living in our emerging metros. Those are places like Columbus, Augusta, Macon, Savannah, even Hinesville and Rome, Albany, are looking for that quality of life. So we need to support that population growth there with improved infrastructure, as well as in rural Georgia, nearly a fourth of our road vehicle miles are traveled on rural roadways. That includes us metro citizens, those of us who live in cities. We travel into those rural areas to visit family, to go on recreational trips, and even to travel to other metros. So safety on rural roadways is important for all of us. And of course, rural is a location for agriculture and a lot of the growth in manufacturing. A lot of pressures on our system. And we feel very confident in the results that we could see from this strategy going forward, the categorical spending. And if you, the next slide, I think, will show us those outcomes that we categorically will be spending about every year. This is average per year is the way we've assessed it. $310 million on safety, $412 million on bridges, $350 million on pavement quality. Operationally, it costs at a minimum $362 million a year to operate our system. And we still believe we can about 40% of our annual revenues can go toward capacity. If the trends stay as they are, we're going to be able to, over a 30-year period, save Georgians 15.2 billion hours of travel time and $425 billion of travel costs. That's incredible, along with the stewardship of our state-owned bridges and pavement and decrease in delay through technology applications. This is a impressive and exciting outcome here. Again, making sure that we are taking care of our infrastructure, but keeping an eye for the future. This is based on current revenue projections and based on current trends we can see in the industry, as well as some of the projections we're seeing in population and employment growth. But any of that could change, and we're going to continue to monitor that, especially with the additional freight flows and any changes that might be occurring at the federal level and federal policy. We will keep a close eye on to make sure we can sustain this level of performance for Georgians.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Could I interrupt you just a minute?
Certainly.
One of the things that the pandemic has shown to me and shown to pretty much everybody in the country is that we've seen if people have access to broadband in other parts of Georgia, they've cut down the number of miles that they're driving. They're reducing their transportation demands. And one of the things that for me, that kind of works pretty well because it takes a lot of pressure off of our transportation dollars. And so one of the things that I'd like to work with you and our folks in transportation to try to make sure that, okay, what do we do to deploy more broadband? Because that really is the alternative to driving. Like we're doing a teleconference today. And when I look at it, said there's a lot of obstacles out there to deployment of broadband, but the return on the dollar, it's much environmentally friendlier. It's a hell of a lot more timely. I can see you right now and smiling. So when I look at where we're at, what's it going to take to look at a policy of moving transportation funding into doing more broadband deployment?
Very, very astute observations, of course, Chairman, and thank you for all of your work in economic development and broadband deployment. Transportation is lucky to have you at the helm now, though. for the work that we do at GDOT is we're looking at some other states, at some best practices in other places, certainly like Utah and Colorado. Our rights of way at GDOT are a critical piece often for the build out of broadband throughout the state. I know that the commissioner's staff has been looking at ways we can improve the way we do our fees for permitting, but I will tell you, the way that we do permitting here at GDOT is really second to none. I think, Commissioner, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've got a 3-day turnaround in permitting for the build out of broadband. So in our rights of way. So that's impressive. We need to sustain that because as you point out, Chairman, broadband is all of our citizens should have access to it. It is the electrification of the 20th century. Broadband is the information superhighway of the 21st century, and it's vital that all of our citizens in Georgia have access to it. We're working in partnership with the Department of Community Affairs and Georgia Technology Authority. There's a role we can play that's delineated in the ACE Act that was passed in 2018. So wherever we can, we are exploring that as part of our rural track of work is what can GDOT do to support broadband build out, certainly for our citizens and businesses and farms to get connected to the internet, but also for transportation purposes. The future of infrastructure is the way we manage it, the way we operate it, the way we help citizens navigate it is going to require ubiquitous fiber. And we're going to be looking into that, studying that very closely to see what our exact role is.
Thank you so much. I'll let you continue.
So with that, that strategic plan approved today that has those categorical investments now flows into the work that's done at the rest of the department. And I'll let the commissioner take it from here.
Thank you, Janine. And I just want to commend Janine in her 7 months quickly working on this SSTP. I think all can see the strategic nature and the vision that will continue to lead Georgia ahead in the transportation sector, which is just articulated by Chairman Ginn, has a lot more to do than just transportation. So we're excited about that. As we translate from the SSTP, that really strategic view, to work our way toward the 10-year plan, I remind everybody that the state has our own budget programs. The federal government has their budget programs that all have to get in alignment with each other. That ultimately comes out of the bottom of the funnel as projects. But I need to remind everybody that we have 16 metropolitan planning organizations around the state who develop their own transportation improvement programs based on their choice in and around their urbanized areas. And then, as Janine mentioned, we have the State Transportation Improvement Program, which is that 4-year financially constrained plan. And then also, I always like to remind everybody of sort of the equity that we have in transportation investment throughout Georgia, meaning that we balance funding across all of our congressional districts. So all those sort of go into the sieve, if you will, that ultimately turns out projects, which gets at sort of where we are for the 10-year plan. And I remind everybody that legislatively, the 10-year plan asks us to address the target percentages of those resources that Janine talked about in the SSTP and the projects that we turn out into these 5 areas: construction of new highway projects, which consist of just that. When you think about a highway capacity adding project or a passing lane project or something like that. Then next you get into maintenance of existing infrastructure. Think of capital maintenance being resurfacing or rehabilitation or say replacing concrete slabs on the interstates, but also includes our routine and preventative maintenance activities. So it's everything, all things maintenance, state of good repair, as I like to call it, or taking care of the house more generally. The next category are bridge repairs and replacement, exactly what it says. So this is bridge maintenance, the investment levels in bridge maintenance, capital bridge maintenance, such as repair of major bridge components to extend the bridge life of our structurally deficient bridges or trying to keep them from being structurally deficient. And of course, simply bridge replacements. The next category is safety enhancements. And this has a lot of things in safety enhancements. Safety projects such as intersection improvements, operational improvements, the famous quick response projects that our districts do, safety hardware upgrades, lighting projects where there may be a lighted interchange, and also our traffic management programs of our heroes and our champs, and those services that we provide, including the cameras, the signs, and the information we try to share with the traveling public. So that's what falls into safety. And lastly, administratively, what constitutes administrative expenses? The biggest program there is something called construction administration. And as I talked to Chairman Perkle on the appropriations, that probably should be called something else. Construction administration is the actual work it takes from survey all the way through construction management. That's design, right of way, environmental permitting, survey, all the things it takes to deliver a project. But we also include in the administrative expenses the department's admin. That's things such as financial management, accounting, basic administrative oversight, if you will, and duties, and also the planning division. So this really gets at what does it take to deliver projects from cradle to grave, if you will. So now the big reveal is here's what the 10-year investment levels look like. The construction of new highway projects, you can see how this is oriented with state percentages, federal percentages, and then totals for the next 10 years. The construction of new highway projects constitutes somewhere in a range between 49 and 55% of the investment level in these 5 categories. Maintenance of existing infrastructure ranges from 21 to 24%. Bridge repairs and replacements range between 9 and 11%. Safety enhancements are about 7 to 8%, and administrative fees average 8% across the board. So this is the breakdown of where the investment levels are made. Again, starting at the very high level at SSTP, working your way all the way down through project expenditures, as we talked about. So that is where that information, what that information is for the 10-year plan, as Janine talked about in pretty good detail. Lots of opportunities for plans to inform projects. I like to say we usually don't have a shortage of planning and plans. It's the getting to projects and make the reality that we get that return on investment once that project becomes a reality and the citizens of Georgia and those passing through Georgia can use it, no matter what the project is. So I'll make sure, I'm pretty sure this has been distributed, but if not, we've got the links that you can easily click on these different documents and go right to them. And then, as always, I'd like to remind your support staff and any aides that you have to go to this website, www.garoads.org, where you can put in your House or Senate district and pull project information. So very easily, you can even export it and print it out if you want to, but a very good resource. If you're curious about what's going on in and around your district, please go to this website. And with that, Chairman Jaspers, we're glad to answer any questions or comments the joint committee may have. And we thank you for the opportunity to be with you today.
Thank you, Commissioner, very much. Got light blinking here. Vice Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner, first of all, I want to thank you and the department. We had a couple of issues up in Whitfield County that you guys have been very reasonable on, and I want to thank you and the department for your help there. And then my question is on 2021, 2022, just as a numbers guy, as I look at those buckets that we're talking about, we see that 21 has a lot of maintenance and bridge repairs, and common sense tells me it's because you have an opportunity with traffic patterns down that you're able to do this work more efficiently right now than you would otherwise. Is that why you see an increase in those numbers this year versus next year? And it kind of redistributes after that, but this year versus next year.
Well, thank you, Representative Carpenter. We certainly have tried to take full advantage of less traffic, especially back in March and April, and actually modified a lot of contracts so that the contractors could get out there when they normally wouldn't be able to work. The numbers here probably are more reflective of just the funds and the fund sources of how they look. So not necessarily a direct correlation, but you're spot on in the fact that we are certainly trying to take full advantage of the lesser traffic that we had back then, and always look for those opportunities to try to balance, the work and not trying to impact the public. But when the traffic patterns have changed like they have, we certainly have been able to be more flexible where we can.
Thank you. Commissioner, I just got just a couple of things. It's just so exciting to be in here and in this committee and just listen to job creation and what we're doing in transportation to maintain and improve Georgia. And that's just great. But I've got a question similar to Vice Chairman Carpenter's. On the 10-year plan on the financial side, you're looking at, I was looking at the federal dollars that are going in there. So I'm seeing, I guess you're feeling that federal dollars are going to increase. Do you have any idea what you're looking at or what we're seeing so far coming down the pike on the federal side?
We certainly are keeping our ears open because, Chairman, the current federal transportation bill has technically expired and Congress has extended it 1 year, so out to September of this year. So Congress will have to either act to come up with a new transportation bills, which have historically been a 5-year transportation bill, or to extend it. Now, the increase in federal level, Congress has been increasing year over year that federal transportation investment. So we think that is going to be the trend. The trend we used here, though, is very conservative. We took a 1% growth factor year over year. So generally, it's been a little bit more than that, but we take the conservative route from a financial planning point of view when we present something like this. And just know that hopefully by next year when we present that, the portfolio of dollars are going to change based on reauthorization. And we're hopeful that that happens because having long-term federal certainty is very important to plan transportation projects. As everybody on the joint committees know, our projects just take too long. And so having federal certainty and knowing that you have a full years of appropriation federally means a lot. And just as history, over the last 3 years or 4 years or so, we have not got a full year's appropriation at the beginning of the federal fiscal year. It's usually for a month or two and gets you to December. And then usually in January or February, there's been an appropriation for the rest of the year. So that becomes a little bit of a cash flow management challenge in delivering projects and trying to get projects out the door when they're ready. But we're a very long answer to your simple question is we're continuing to watch that and are hopeful that we'll see continued federal investment.
Thank you. Senator Lucas.
Commissioner, in your 10-year plan, is there room or have you considered 16, adding another lane on 16 from Savannah through Macon? My most easterly counties are Wilkerson and Twiggs, and it seems that the truck traffic is getting heavier and heavier coming out of the Savannah region. Is the 10-year plan include what transportation we would have coming up 16 because of the widening of the port?
Senator Lucas, a good question. And as you have seen exactly that what our data shows is that truck volumes are continuing to increase. That will fall into what Janine was talking about into our freight and logistics plan that is starting this year and will run over the next basically 2 years, where we'll be looking ahead for what improvements such as what you're suggesting may be needed along 16. So that would be in the calculus of the plan, which will ultimately would work its way back into a 10-year plan. And the other great news, I'll remind everybody is our partnership with our friends at the Georgia Ports Authority of some infrastructure work we did down there to replace a bridge and span a canal and their mega Mason rail yard so that more containers can get on trains, which hopefully takes some of those containers off I-16 and I-75. But Senator Lucas, that will be something that we will focus on is all the freight movement throughout the state, including on I-16, to see if that does need to be through that sieve that I showed you that turns into a project. So we'll just stay tuned and certainly be in contact with you as that plan gets underway.
Thank you. Any other members have any question for Commissioner? Anybody online have a wave at us or say something? None? Well, Commissioner, I thank you a lot. Yes, it's been a learning experience for me for the last little bit. I enjoyed meeting you in your office the other day and getting to know you better and what y'all are up to, and I appreciate it very much. Senator again.
Always good to be with you, Russell. So we'll keep working in partnership.
Well, thank you very much.
both. Yeah, thank you both. And thank you guys for joining the board meeting today. As I said this morning, I believe that is historic to have both chairmen of the House and Senate together at a board meeting. So that meant a lot to our State Transportation Board. Thank you for the partnership.
Oh, we enjoyed it. Yeah, I just want to also members point out Josh Waller, your representative right here. Wave at him if you don't know him. He's been a busy guy on road naming, I've understood, and other issues. Well, that's it for your 10-year plan. We sure appreciate it, Commissioner and Janine. Next up, we're going to, you got their freight and logistics report in your hands. We were going to have somebody that was going to come talk about it, but something has come up and they've not. I just want you to look at toward the very end. There's a House and the Senate one where there are conclusions and the Senate ones and recommendations. Take some time on your own to look at that. One thing I've been doing, members, and mine is watching all these. I wasn't part of the commission, so I've been slowly going through them and listening. The report is a great, just a mirror of what's going on in the committee. I think we're working very diligently right now to, on the House side, to bring a couple of bills in the next week that address some of the issues with partnerships and diesel and all kinds of good stuff. And so we'll be working on that, and you'll see that very quickly next week, we hope.
Appreciate your leadership, Chairman Jaspers. And I think this committee could be adjourned if we're not. So
We
inclined.
certainly can. Thank you, members, for being here. We sure appreciate it.